Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. This video, just been to the post office to pick up my parcels. The new Army Painters XL Wet Palette, the Wargamers edition. The big boy, the one we're all excited for, the one we've been waiting for. I want to start this video straight away because I'm freaking excited. Hopefully you are. Going to go home, going to unbox it for you, let you see what you get inside the box. Then I'm going to take the palette for a spin, give it a test, see what I think, and then give you a review and a little conclusion as to what I think of the product. Hopefully show you all the good parts, some of the bad parts if there are any. Fingers crossed there aren't, but I'll cover that for you. Anyway guys, starting the video straight away. It's winter, it's freezing. Hit like, hit subscribe, send me some love. I'm out in the cold for you. So first things first, let's have a look what you get in the actual box and what you can expect when you pop this thing open. First thing you're presented with is the usual Army Painter guide, which I mention every single time I see one of these, that is surprisingly good. There's a few things that have caught me out that I didn't know before, and it's worth a quick flick through. Next up is their usual smashed mission. Oh my lord. Next up is their usual smashed, missing or broken items. They've got insanely good customer support. It's well worth contacting them if you have any problem whatsoever. Little guide as well included on how to use the wet palette. I'm guessing that's not included in the larger guide, and it's very specific to this actual product. It's going to talk you through preparing your wet palette, using the wet palette in general, followed by how to store it and a little warning not to transport it. It's one thing that often is a little bit tricky with these wet palettes is you think they lock tight and you can transport them around, but essentially the paint's going to run around all inside and make a hell of a mess for you. And then the third and final piece of paper material is how to assemble miniatures. What is that supposed to work? Using, I guess, Army Painters tools and guides and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it just talks you through building your plastic miniatures. I don't know why this is in here. A little extra information and tutorials, but that is what's in there in form of paper. The next thing you're presented with is some sweet bubble wrap. Guys, they've not mentioned this, but it's a free tool for adding a rust effect to your miniatures. If you've not got any of this at the moment, it comes free of charge with your wet palette. Then we get into the juicy bit, which is the actual wet palette. What is this? Piece of random card, I guess to protect something, who knows, but it's the standard. I say standard, it's the usual. I say usual, it's this elastic band style of mechanism to hold it all together. So I'll remove that pinged into my leg, and then you're presented with the Army Painters logo. It's the Wargamers edition, as though you couldn't tell. It also says that on the side and nothing underneath. It's quite a big boy. As expected, it's a much larger one. It's incredibly thick, but let's have a look at the actual wet palette while it's in my hands. Turn the box sideways, pop the lid off. You're presented with the Speedpaint dry palette portion of this Wargamers edition. A little space for your paint brushes and keeping some of it separate for some reason, but you've got two tiny little compartments here. A load of wells, 6x5, 30 wells, so you can use 30 different colours and hope they dry and you can clean them out if you need more, but 30 is plenty, isn't it? And then you can pop this section off, which is hard plastic, and we move that out of the way. And then you've got the base, the bottom part of your wet palette, nice and shiny, so you can see my ceiling. Also inside the box is some little bits of cardboard that you could maybe paint up as some terrain. But then you have a bunch of hydration paper, which is basically the parchment paper, and then a couple of folded sponges. So you get two sponges, one just as a backup there, sort of mold-free, anti-mold, that kind of thing. So hopefully you'll only ever need one, but you've got a backup for if you need it. And then, yeah, these 50 sheets of paper so you can clear it out 50 times. I'll just build it up so we can see what it looks like. Strength of the bear. Ooh, that's soft. Should use that as a duvet. So you're just going to slap this in here. Interestingly enough, it's way bigger than the plastic base. Wonder why that is. I wonder if it changes shape or if it wants to be this big. But yeah, look at this, bigger than the palette. More carefully open the paper because I only want one single sheet and I want to keep this. Oh, even better, it's got a resealable edge. It actually peels in the middle, and this will go on top like so. There we go, shift that out of the way, and that's your wet palette. Obviously I've got no water in it, I've not done it particularly neatly, but you essentially have that. This will be able to slot back on top, and then a final lid just to store it all away nicely. Click, click, clack. Anyway, that's everything we get in the box. I need to go and try this out. I just need to go and paint a load of stuff and see how it sits, how it fits, how it feels as I go about the hobby experience. there we have it, guys. Just been away, spent about 5 hours semi-batch painting. I painted up 3 miniatures using the acrylic side, the wet palette side of this palette. And then I came back and painted up another 2 miniatures using the speed paint side, the dry part of this palette. Miniatures all came out well, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Whether that's my skill or the wet palette, I'll let you guys decide, but it shouldn't really affect it that much. It made it a pleasant experience to paint, and I kept getting interrupted during both paint sessions and coming back and forth, and the palette helped me by not allowing the paint to dry. Let's crack to the important bit and get on with the review. Let's start by reviewing the thing as a whole, as an entire entity. We'll start with the price, and this comes in at around £30, which puts it at a similar price point as the larger Redgrass Games wet palette, as well as the Exemplar by Game Envy if you're in the US. Otherwise, you've got quite a lot of substantial postage and tax to add to that, but yeah, around the right mark. Having said that, you are getting both a wet palette and a dry palette, so you're getting more bang for your buck in that regard. You're getting 2 palettes for the price of 1. We could easily call that an extra £10 of value. The next thing to mention is the size of it, especially if you're coming from the original wet palette by the Army Painter. You're going to be looking at about twice the size. Another noticeable difference is the change in colour, the original being this awesome looking red and black setup, this one being black, white, but you're throwing the elastic and it's also red. So similar, but subjective, depends which colour you're going to prefer. I'm going to stick to my red and black, but if you like black and white and red, you're going to be a little slightly more impressed with the new version. And then obviously on top of being bigger and a slightly different colour, they've added this entire section that is the dry palette, sitting nicely between the lid and the wet. Let's delve a little bit deeper now and talk specifically about the wet palette aspect of this Wargamers edition. Frankly, it's good. It works. If you use the original Army Painter wet palette, you're going to kind of know how this feels. In fact, if you use any decent wet palette, you're going to know how this feels. It keeps your paint nice and moist, so you can paint for a longer period of time, as well as actually if you put enough water in the sponge, it'll seep through a little bit more, and I find that just thins it that tiny little bit. You'll be getting the perfect amounts, and it just takes thinning your paints away from you. It can make that a little bit easier for people who aren't that confident thinning paints. On top of that, it makes wet blending and mixing colours in general together much easier, as well as breezing through any sort of batch painting long session you might want to do with your painting. As I mentioned, the paint was moist during my entire painting session, and I was interrupted quite a few times.
Daddy, 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 Daddy.
Yeah. Kept coming back and forth, and it never caused me any issue with any of the paint drying up. I would even go as far to say as this would probably keep it wet for a good few days, depending how much water you put on that sponge. The last thing with this is the sheer size of it, guys. There's plenty of space on this one to have all the colours that you need during a painting session. The only thing there to bear in mind is if space is at a premium to you, that you might want to consider this is quite a big boy. Moving back to the dry palette aspect of this Wargamers edition, the biggest change to this particular palette, as you can see, there was plenty of wells in here. I didn't even come close to running out, and I painted up 2 entire miniatures. Now the wells are incredibly large and deep. There's plenty of space in there. The downside being you can often use a little bit more paint than you'd ever need on anything you're painting. The upside being it's very easy to mix colours together and make your own custom ones, as well as giving it a stir if it starts to separate like the metallic speed paints do. One thing I didn't expect from these wells was the amount of time they kept the paint wet for. Again, I went back and forth from my desk. It was multiple hours in total, and every one of them was still wet every single time I went to use them. I often miss little bits when I'm painting miniatures, so I do go back and forth between the colours, and this saved me getting out tiny little bits to fix up tiny areas I'd missed. The last positive with this bit is this palette does not really flex or bend when I'm moving it, or if I have to move it, there's no risk of the thing collapsing under me and risking splashing speed paint all over my £7 Burton jeans. But I think we do need to address the elephant in the room, and guys, this is that it does not flex. If anybody is unaware, the most widely considered palette for speed paints is just a pop-it fidget toy. They flex, they bend, they are so easy to clean. I can't even show you cleaning this because it's that easy and therapeutic to clean. It's already been done, and I should have been prepared for this video to demonstrate it, but this is what it's got to compete with, and I feel like everybody knows that at the moment. This does not flex or bend. The paint does not easily come out. Let's give it live on camera though, a test to see. So using the back of my brush, I'm not getting this speed paint out. That is disappointing, let's say. But most of us we've done one. Most of us are probably fairly used to how difficult this can be to clean off some palettes. If you're used to using a dry palette, even for acrylics, I find them a chore to clean. This is nothing new. So I use Pringle lids because I can just throw them away or massively flex them and break the paint off. Let's see about something a little bit easier to clean these up with. Switch into a cocktail stick and let's just take this for a little spin. Yes, much easier. Ping that straight out. Yeah, with a cocktail stick, or what do you guys call them? A toothpick if you're across the pond. Yeah, this is a breeze, guys. I can't fault it on this. It isn't a poppet, it isn't just flicking it inside out, but you can see they're all coming off, aren't they? No problem whatsoever. On top of this, I did do some bonus acrylic because you don't always want your acrylics to be overly moist. This was a metallic, and that's a good example of one you wouldn't want to be. This was my primer. This was just a white acrylic, and I just wanted to see how easy this was to clean with a toothpick. Just once again, it's probably like any other dry palette you've ever used. Not too difficult at all. Let's try the white as well, just see if that metallic just clung together a little bit easier. Yes, the white is a little bit harder. It broke my stick. This is quite a lot thicker. There's a big thick layer, but again, it's not taking forever, is it? There you go, guys. I want to show you that on camera so you could see the effort. It's not really an effort, but it's not really a poppet, is it? That's how I'd summarize that. I think the last little bit I wanted to talk about, because this is cool, you do have this extra space for sort of hobby tools, paintbrushes, things like that. So keep my brushes in here. It's very nice feature. The original one had it too. But one thing to note, if you've got a lot of brushes like I do, these are not even massive brushes, but sadly they don't fit. Like, I can take the caps off, but I'd rather have the caps. And this one's an army painter brush as well, the monster brush, and with the protector on, sadly they just don't fit. So something to bear in mind. Just keep some brushes in here, but you probably would anyway. Like, I wouldn't keep my whole supply. I've got way too many things that I would want to keep in there anyway, so it's maybe a first world problem. There we have it. Just to summarize, I do believe if you do not have a wet palette, this is going to be a nice choice. It's going to be very easily available. It's going to be in stores, in shops. That's one of the beauties of Army Painters products. They're in game stores. People's mums, people's grands, you can pick one up if you forget your wet palette. You can grab one in the store you're painting, that sort of thing. If you're coming from the smaller version and you've always just wanted a bigger one, or you started dabbling in speed paints and you still use both acrylics and speed paints, it can be a great upgrade. I do feel I wouldn't be doing you guys justice if I did not say the poppet is cheaper and easier to clean. It's definitely smaller wells, and while that's good because it doesn't waste as much speed paint, I genuinely am nervous. I mean, this flexes like mad. If I ever have to pick this up, that speed paint barely comes off your skin. Get that on your clothes, your carpet, or dare I say it, splatter it all over your games room. It is not going to clean up very easily. Furthermore to that, the Exemplar has always been my favorite wet palette. I've always really enjoyed this. Essentially just clicks shut tighter. It's got a more airtight seal. The paints last a little bit longer. They keep moist for a greater period of time. You also have a little control for like changing the humidity in there. But having said that, these are quite expensive to get into the UK. They're $34 to pick up in the US plus postage. And then in the UK, you've obviously got another $20 shipping on that, maybe taxes and custom imports and things like that. It also comes with a small area for a dry palette, but Turbo Dork recently added a non-stick silicone dry palette, very similar to the original that comes in it, except it's flexible. So you can add a kind of poppet style version in there, but it only has 12 wells. The Army Painter version obviously just had a mega amount more. I have actually taken my other one of these for a spin and I ran out of wells and I painted one miniature. So it's a genuine concern. If you only have 12 wells, you might want to look at a big boy like this. Anyway, I tried to cover everything it can and can't do and hopefully give you a nice, fair review where you can decide what you want to do with your own money and your own lives. Thank you ever so much for watching. Leave any questions and comments in the comments below me. Down there. Go down there. Say hi. Just nobody ever says hi to me. I'm not asking much. See ya. Something like that.